Very much to everyone for joining our webinar today. I'm very excited to have James here from Giki, who's going to be talking to us about taking our colleagues with us on our sustainability journey. It's one of the biggest challenges we face. Whilst we might be incredibly enthusiastic about getting our organisation to be more sustainable, it is really difficult to take other people along with us. And the Giki app and platform is a really great, very engaging tool, which James is going to talk to us about. A quick introduction to James. He has been working hard. It must have taken hours and hours of work to pull Giki together. Prior to that, he worked in the investment and finance sector, which was building, having come through Cambridge University with a degree in economics. So he's a man who really knows his stuff, and I'm delighted to welcome him today. So I will now hand over to you, James.
Great, thank you. It's lovely to be here and to see you all today. Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of background on Giki and how we work with companies to kind of engage and educate their kind of employees. But underneath it all is what Camilla was saying, which is that we think it is so much easier for companies to get their employees to start to join them on their sustainability journey, on their net zero journey, on their ESG journey, if those employees have already started on theirs. And that's really kind of underpins our whole sort of theory of change of what we're trying to do. And so I co-founded Giki in 2017. I actually co-founded it with my wife Jo. She was at the Carbon Disclosure Project, CDP, started when it was a really kind of small NGO, and my time in investments, I was very focused on ESG investing. Started the firm I was at. I started their ESG team in 2007. At which point I thought, wow, we're really late. Obviously, I now know with the benefit of 15 years hindsight, actually we were quite early in that. And it sort of really speaks to the need now for urgent action, because we've known we've got to do it for a while, but just never quite got around to doing enough of it. So this is a bit about Giki. We're really fortunate. We work with everyone from small businesses with under 10 people right up to global multinationals like Accenture, Adobe and NatWest, but all with this idea of how do we bring people with us on the sustainability journey. We're a B Corp, we're also a social enterprise. And to us, that's important because it really highlights it's all about the mission. And that mission is, how do we get people to build sustainable behaviours and cut carbon? And although we've got the platform, we really think of ourselves as a kind of sustainability team that uses tech and uses presentations and uses climate comms as a way to drive more climate action. And I think that's one of the reasons we're also a United Nations Race to Zero accelerator for this exact topic for employee engagement. And let's go. These are the kind of, when people come to us, the reasons they kind of want to use Giki. The first one is just all around the fact that so many people now tell us we want to educate and engage our staff as part of our sustainability journey. And Giki will just be one part of that. Whether it's internal comms, whether it's their own net zero journey through their operational footprint, there'll be often lots of things that a company is doing, but we can really help on that sort of that engagement part. But we also hear more and more from companies that they're getting this demand from their staff. They want to work for a firm with a good environmental commitment, but they also want some help on what they should do. But all against the wrapper of the last one, which is that it has to be positive, it has to be engaging, it has to be helping people know what they can do and never telling them what they should do. And the way that the mechanism that we use for that is challenges and competitions, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. So this is what kind of Giki Zero is. It's a kind of a combination of digital and physical. We've got an online platform. You can use it right now as an individual for free. That's part of sort of being a B Corp. And that helps you understand your personal carbon footprint But more importantly than that, for most people, is coming up with ideas and steps for how to reduce it. We've researched over 160 different steps people can take, from super simple, super quick, like boiling the water you need in the kettle, right through to some of the big changes we all need to make, whether that's around diets, heat pumps, those sorts of things. And actually, we've just launched this week a new report called the Climate Super 8 that goes into some of those big 8 lifestyle changes that people can do, with a key message that people can get from their current carbon footprint of around 10 times in wealthy countries to under 3 with the Climate Super 8, not needing to invent anything. Not to duck the fact that some of these are big lifestyle changes, but just to really highlight that it is possible. There is still a window for us kind of globally to squeeze through. And then that platform works alongside our engagement program. So we think it's really important to understand the companies we're working with, the themes that are going to work, and also the types of steps that we should be showing people to really drive engagement, because we are all different. And I wanted to kind of highlight that with like some of the different groups that we think about when we're talking to companies. What we see is like the different green audiences. So on this call, I would imagine there are probably quite a lot of super greens. We love this group. Generally, this is a group that will pay more for some things. They will face more admin hassle. They'll encourage other people to do stuff. It's quite a small group, less than we think about, less than 10% of the population. It's also not a group that's actually growing very quickly. And the reason for that is that if you've been worried about climate change, you've probably been worried for quite a long time now. This is not a new thing. However, the next group, the group that we call the busy but awares, this is a group that is growing very, very fast. Even in the time that we've been running Giki over the last 6 years, we've seen a dramatic shift in the awareness of people about the impact of climate change, if not necessarily the action they can take about it. So there's much more priming now. People are ready to act. But whilst they have a good sense generally of what they should do, they want to know something in a bit more specific detail, but also they want it to be part of a collective. Acting alone against climate change seems a bit pointless to a lot of people. So that sense of a collective achievement is really key. Now, the next group is what we call the pragmatists, and they're the people that will do it just because everyone else is doing it. It's the right thing to do, or the price is better. And they will tend to come after the busy but awares in terms of that climate movement. But in some areas where you see things becoming price competitive, where you see it being an easier option, they will move super, super quickly if we can get there, which is why so much of climate tech is important. And the last group we call the step skeptics. It's sort of the, what about China? What about India? What about this? There's no point. We get it. We want them to have a voice, but we also understand that we can get the other groups acting much more quickly, and just sort of do what we can with them, often around things like conservation, but understand that we can't get to everybody today. So how do we make it fun and engaging? Well, we do that through our Geeky challenges. So we have Giki running in the background, but also what we want to do is bring people together for like short bursts of activity. We find this works really well for engagement. And within this, what we call climate comms is just as important, giving people a reason to sign up, giving them little nudges about why it's going to be good for things beyond the climate, good for saving money, good for their health, good for their sense of collective achievement. So bringing people together and then having the challenges and the leaderboards, and then showing people the progress that they're able to make in a relatively short period of time, but never ducking the fact that what they can do in a week is not going to solve climate change. So this is all about getting people started, doing the smaller steps, trying new things, because we know that in the long term, it's the lots of us taking small steps together that can really help. But it's all of us taking the more important lifestyle changes that we want to get to, and we see sort of Geeky challenges as a really good starting point for people to do that. And when we run those challenges, it is so important that the topics that we choose are accessible to people in their everyday lives. When we started Giki, we very naively thought, look, if we build this absolutely fantastic carbon calculator where people can go in and put in as much data as they want, then that will show them what their carbon footprint is, and then they will kind of, with our steps, work out their own path to net zero. Almost nobody thinks like that. What they want to know is, what can I do in my life right now that's kind of interesting and is going to start making a difference? And so things like Plastic-Free July is great because people hate single-use plastic, but then opening their eyes to all the ways that plastic is in their lives and their plastic detox is a really nice theme to take on, so they can start doing it and then work up from there. Talking about saving money, which we do in our Fuming About Emissions, like making it, of our 160 steps, over 60 of them save money for people. So really turning on its head this idea that sustainability has to cost more money. It doesn't. Some things require investment, but plenty don't. Start there rather than sort of going straight to, you know, should I buy a new EV? And one interestingly that seems to be getting a lot more attention this year is around water. Water conservation, water usage, just being very aware of the old adage that, you know, if climate change is a shark, then water is its teeth. And that sort of feeling for people of like, what can we do about water? And again, showing them that the water that you use in your home absolutely save lots, but the water in your diet, the water in your clothing will be even bigger. But yeah, making it real for people, making it accessible, and things like food. Obviously, whenever January comes around, thinking about diets and that sort of thing is a great way to engage people. And this is just an example of one of the companies we work with, which was NatWest, and this is a partner I really liked, because a lot of the time we're talking to heads of sustainability, people in HR who want to roll this out. What actually happened at NatWest was, this was a group of graduates on their Sustainable Futures program, a group of graduates that found Giki, really liked it, wanted to roll it out, and took it all the way up to their board to get approval. And now they've rolled it out across the bank. And for me, that really showed like the power of little groups in companies and what they can do when they're given the right platform and they have that motivation that they created themselves. So now it's all, you know, across, you know, thousands of people all across the world, from that kind of initial core of a few graduates who really wanted to make a difference. And I think that idea that we all have a role to play is really key in like taking people together on your sustainability journey, that people understand that they don't have to be making decisions about the office lighting, the office heating, the factory efficiency to be having something that they can do. And when we often talk about this in the context of like a game of football, and that's that we've all got a role to play in order to have a really great game of football, and we need everyone if we're going to halve emissions this decade. So we sort of think about policy. So we're focused on individual action, but that's not because we don't need policy in great companies. And we think about policy as like they're like the referee. So the referee is there setting the rules of the game, and you've got to have really clear rules, and those rules have got to be consistent. But at the same time, we need to be aware that changing the rules of the game does take a long time, not least because there are a lot of stakeholders involved. When the rules do change, you see really big changes in the way that the game is being played, and whether that's at the level of COP, whether it's at the level of nations or even local government, policy is crucial, consistent sort of stable policy. But you also need companies, and you need companies because they're providing the goods and services for the rest of us to play the game. And if we don't have any equipment, if we haven't got a football, it's going to be a pretty hopeless game. And companies are increasingly, I think, realizing the huge influence that they can have in terms of cost, in terms of availability, in terms of how they make things, and that idea that simple kit can go kind of a really long way. So companies, whether they're in things like the Race to Zero, whether they're setting their own science-based targets, the different ways they're thinking about sustainability is crucial, because once we've got policy and once we've got companies providing great kit, that's when individuals can really get involved. And we see it all the time. people are so innovative, so exciting, so motivated when they kind of know what the rules are and they've got the kit, and then they can just crack on. And that's the bit that we love seeing, is just how much they can do, from the small ideas in the office to the way that they might sort of take something back to their to a community group. But underneath it all, we all have a role. However, whatever our sphere of influence it is, there's something that we can do today. And then I just wanted to kind of finish off on something that we're working on at the moment, and if it's of interest to anyone on the call, obviously I'd love to talk about it more. And that's that we've just launched like an employee race to zero. So our idea here is to bring companies from around the world. We've got 16 great companies already signed up to this across 10 different sectors, from big companies like Network Rail, the law firm Baker McKenzie, down to small companies like Corsten Press, who make the great apple juice, if you've ever had it. So bringing people together, so we're going to have teams competing in the run up to COP. Now, this is not only to drive climate action, but it's also to show people just like how big their sphere of influence can be. And it's linking to the UN Race to Zero campaign, which this year is really focusing on what they call their 5th P, and that's around persuade. How do you persuade your supply chain to be more sustainable? How do you persuade your employees to be more sustainable? How do you persuade policymakers to be more sustainable? And as well as planning out what they're going to do, having a really concrete path themselves, is to now think about how they can use that influence a bit further. So it's going to be a great kind of month of competition and then run up to COP28. It's open to anyone who's in the race to zero or has got an intent to, because they've started building sort of science-based targets. So yeah, do ping me if you're interested, and join some other kind of really great organizations on the start line. The organizations we've got already involved, we're going to have small teams of 5 to 50 people, but they're representing over 600,000 employees around the world. And I think that sense of what you can do individually is not really about you as an individual. It's about the way that sphere of influence just kind of keeps on growing. So I'll stop there, stop sharing, and then we love, obviously, so much about climate action, climate change is about like talking and having conversations. So I'd much rather, spend some good time doing that as well.
Excellent. Thank you, James. So I think, so we've got obviously a lot of the people who are on the call today are IIE members. Part of the IIE programme involves having a project phase, or delivering some projects which are sustainability related. So this Giki can be used by individuals who could sign up and kind of report their progress, I suppose, if they were using it separately. But they can also sign up as companies. And I presume there's a sort of fee structure for that, and it depends on the size, does it? And then they can kind of get a bit more of their sort of an idea of the progress within the company. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So yeah, companies can sign up for our sort of pro version. And yeah, we price that based on the size of the organization, and then we work with them to build the challenges. We run the challenges for them, give them the impact reports to tell them how they're doing, to give that sense of like collective achievements. And we actually have like some companies that run like it over many years, like NatWest, and they have like challenges through the year on different topics at different times of the year. We have other companies that come to us and go, you know what, I'm going to get more impact if we squeeze all this into 2 weeks, because I know that's what my firm loves. 2 weeks of really intense activity. So we just did a sustainability games, we call them, for a firm called Springer Nature, and they got nearly they're aiming to get 1,000 staff involved in a 2-week period and take thousands and thousands of steps. So that's really a cultural thing. It's for us, it's all about the impact. But yeah, either are kind of great ways to engage staff. And as I was saying with those green audiences, engage, we hope, more than just the super greens. Much as we love them, we need the other groups to be taking climate action and feeling the why of taking climate action as well as actually doing it.
Yeah, and I'm always interested in that categorization of people. Do people switch groups, or they basically stay in the group that they originated in,
Yeah,
so to speak?
I think the super green group is probably the slowest moving, but there is kind of flow through the other groups. So I think there are far fewer kind of step skeptics than there were in the past. People are now much more pragmatic and willing to do stuff if it isn't going to cost more money, or if other people are doing it. There's been more social norming around that, I think. But yeah, I think the fastest growing and changing group is that busy but aware group, where and even within that, it's kind of a bit more segmented. There are people who are willing to kind of prioritize things a lot more than others. But yeah, there's kind of people are moving, I think, from the pragmatists into the busy but aware. And I think, unfortunately, that's just due to the fact we're now feeling it. We've felt climate change in the last few years in a way that we haven't kind of in the prior, and that human beings are not necessarily great at long-term thinking, but we are pretty amazing when it comes to reacting and sorting out things that are right in our face. I was actually reading Carbon Brief, which is a fantastic newsletter, Everything Carbon, and their chief scientist was describing the September record temperatures, and with his sort of wonderful data analysis and brain, he just called it gobsmackingly bananas in terms of just how big these records are broken, and that's what's making people think about more of it in their lives. And it's not great that we're there, but it is good that it's driving more people to think about it.
Yeah, and I think Giki is brilliant in terms of just that, giving people nudges about what to do, what they can do, which I know, as you highlighted it, but that on an individual level, you feel like you might not be doing, maybe it's not worth bothering about, but actually when you see it all amalgamated, then you can really have, deliver some change, can't you?
Yeah, definitely that you see that power of the collective, but also I hope the tone we try and strike is that just because you can't do everything, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do something. And I think that's been a bit of a blocker for people too, is that if we take sort of the stereotypical super green life of plant-based heat pump, no car or electric car, no flying, secondhand clothes, like there are very few people that are there. And that can be a blocker for some people to think, is that what I'm aspiring to? And actually the answer is no, that's not what you're aspiring to right now. What you're aspiring to right now is, how am I going to live sustainably this year? What am I going to change in my life? How might I, if I'm a bit greener, think about how am I going to cut my carbon footprint by 10%? But if I'm not there, how am I going to think about the sustainable behaviors I'm going to develop? And that's where to start, because it's like get started and never stop, rather than kind of look at this, what might feel like an impossible goal now, and go, oh, just, I'm never going to get there, so don't worry about doing anything.
Just picking up on the actions, how many? So we're obviously, IIE talks to people in a work context primarily. How many are sort of related to work, and how many are related to sort of home life? And is there, I mean, there a lot of those boundaries are very blurred, I would guess, but is that right?
Yeah, so we've got so a lot of our actions are about you as an individual, and as you say, because of the blurring, that will be everywhere. So if you're recycling or thinking about food waste, whether you're in the office, remote working, in the workplace, like at home, that's kind of goes for everywhere. Then we have some like more specific kind of work actions around, where you might be able to use your sphere of influence, like thinking about whether your pension provider is net zero, reading your company sustainability plan to kind of get on board, joining your company sustainability team, but general runs rather than the specific ones, which then need to be very kind of company focused of like, what are the exact actions I'm going to do in work, which we don't cover. So yeah, I'd say probably about half of them are ones that you can do at home and at work, because that's just how you're living. And that might be from thinking about your commute to thinking about, if you are working from home, how you kind of save energy rather than use more energy. And then the ones where it just doesn't really matter where you are, that's all about being sustainable.
Okay, brilliant. I should just reiterate to people that if you have a question that you'd like to ask specifically, then do put your hand up and then I'll unmute you and you can ask it. I want to go back to the climate super 8, and I don't know if that's the list that you just sort of rattled off quite quickly, but what are those? What's on that list? Can you divulge?
Yeah, so within the sort of, and this is actually research that originally we did with Imperial College London to look at whether or not. So as quick background, so the average carbon footprint in wealthy nations is about 10 tons, and by 2030, to hit 1.5 degrees, everyone around the world needs to be on about 2.5 tons. So that's the task for the next kind of 7 years. But then the question becomes, well, is that possible? And that's what we wanted to kind of answer. And the answer is, it absolutely is possible based on technologies existing today. So no, like, let's hope we get there and then we got some sort of special direct carbon capture or something like that. So yeah, so then we broke that down to look at the things that we can do. And I have to put them off on my fingers as I go to make sure I do them. But it starts with things like some of the really big ones, ditching fossil fuels at home. So those are big activities, but that is things like heat pumps, really getting fossil fuels out of the way that we heat our homes, and then making the switch to renewable electricity. Some of which has been done for us in the UK by changes in the grid. Some of which might be by changing your provider. Then it's sort of shifting diets. And here we're always stressing it's shifting to a more plant-based diet, not shifting to a vegan diet. Both because you can actually make really big cuts in your carbon footprint by going more plant-based, but also because a vegan diet for many people is either unattainable or unwelcome. And so it's not a good target to set people, but actually moving to a more plant-based diet, you can get a long way there. Then we have steps all around, like how we kind of electrify and share on travel. So things we know about using public transport more when it's available to us, which is insufficient in many countries. Making the shift to an electric car, and within the piece, just making sure we dispel some of the myths, like electric cars absolutely do save carbon over the lifetime of them. It just is categorical, and just sort of taking things like that. We do these little mini carbon calculators online to help people with those. Maybe I won't go through all the 8 or 10 in too much of the list, but then 2 other ones I will mention. One which, because people will think about it a lot, is just like saving energy everywhere. Thinking about all the little things that you can do that actually together turn into one of the super 8, and that's from turning off lights to boiling the water that you need in the kettle to thinking about leaving the TV on when you leave the room, etc. So lots of little things that kind of add up. And then just the last one I mentioned, because a lot of people don't focus on it very much, but is our money. So where we bank, where our pension is invested. And that's a bit different, because then you're really talking about, those are the emissions that you finance as opposed to the emissions that you're emitting. But in the same way, I'm sure a lot of this group is familiar with like scope 3, and within scope 3 there is finance emissions for a reason, that can be a part of it. But just also highlighting to people that if you are typically older, typically wealthier, and therefore have a larger pension pot, then actually your financed emissions can be quite large. And just so thinking about starting off with the fact is, do you feel comfortable with that? And sometimes we ask people the question, if I said to you, would you like to invest in some of the world's biggest coal miners, companies that fund anti-climate change movements, companies that measure their footprint in gigatons, billions of tons? And they go, no, not really. We go, well, that's the FTSE 100. Just to kind of frame that for them, and they go, well, yeah, then maybe I can think about making this change. But yeah, those are some of them, and I'll happily sort of share the report. But beneath it all, we just want people to know it is possible.
And that really resonates with the IIE program. So lots of those steps are within our program, what we're sort of asking people to do. And I think sometimes we are guilty of saying, you can do this, you can do that, you can do that, do so many things. And actually, if you try and distill it down to, 8 sections and then get people working under there, then that is really valuable. It helps to sort of clear some of the noise, doesn't it,
Yeah.
that is around.
And that point is so, like, it's so important to help people understand, like, the what next, not almost like the what's possible, because that's how a lot of people will take a problem and just do it bit by bit. And so before Giki Zero, Joe and I, just my wife, we had an app called Giki Badges, where you could basically scan like any supermarket product.
I remember that.
Yeah, and find out if it was sustainable and healthy and ethically sourced. And we used to say to people, take this app home and scan something and find out, how it scores. And when we did that as a notification, we found that very few people did it. When we said to them, go and scan something in your fridge and find out how sustainable it is, suddenly loads of people did it, because you were taking away degrees of freedom. And that's what we need a lot of the time. Just like, I just want to know, I want to make sure it's aligned with what I want to do, but when it is, what's my next thing or my next 3 things? It's much easier to tackle problems like that.
Oh, that is absolutely, so right. Just going back to the employee race to zero, which PECT has also joined, and all the investors in the environment team have signed up. So I was in a webinar this morning talking about more about what it's going to involve. But it is it's sort of it's for specifically the entry gate is those who've made a commitment to set a net zero carbon target, which has been officially registered. Is that correct? Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, in the
and certainly we would really like some IIE members to compete with us. It is if you've done those 2 things, then it is free for SMEs to join.
That's right. Yeah.
And it involves recruiting a team of between 5 and 50, as you said, and then it's going to be a series of kind of sort of the different actions that people can take, but primarily sitting around 3 themes, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, taking those 3 themes during the month before COP, and then having around that sort of that idea of you can participate in COP even if you're not there, to show what people can do. And yeah, each of those 3 themes being kind of accessible things that we can all tackle in our everyday lives. And as well as kind of seeing the climate action, we also hope it's going to be quite a nice way for usually these groups of 5 to 50 people, they're probably going to be leaning more to your super greens or your kind of greener end of the busy better wares, but also a really nice way for people to meet other people with shared interests across different organizations, across different sectors and around the world. And we're hoping to kind of do a bit of knowledge sharing too, of like just to hear some great ideas from people and what they're doing to trigger that. Yeah, so I think it's a nice way to kind of get that sense of, I didn't know that company over there and that one over there. We've got the latest joiner is actually a firm called Generation Investments, who's Al Gore's asset management firm. So just like everything from Al Gore's asset management firm, to, as I was mentioning, the Corsten Press. I think it's really nice to see that kind of that sense of a cross-sector achievement.
I've already signed up to the WhatsApp group, so of the team leaders. So but I think it's really great, as you say, for sharing a feeling, because everybody's facing the same sort of issues of trying to get engagement or think what to do next, and then also sharing this good practice, and actually, and just hearing what other organisations might not be it, but it's what people are trying, and being brave enough to try it. Might not be absolutely perfect, but it's at least taking steps.
Exactly, because taking people with you on your sustainability journey is hard. Like it's like there's no ducking that one. And so just that, as you say, just hearing from other people about what their good practice was to push people over the line on something can be really, really helpful. And we hear loads of good stories there. That just we have one example. So Compass, who's a big food delivery company that we do a lot of work with. They've done huge things in terms of a lot of the burgers that they sell in canteens. We've probably all eaten in some Compass food over the last 12 months in some office or canteen or NHS facility somewhere. And they did something called the 50-50 burger, where they didn't go that this is a plant-based burger. They basically just shifted half of the ingredients from beef to mushrooms. Taste just as good, priced, I think, similar or even a little bit less. And then you got a great sell, and just hearing that of going, that's kind of a really good example of good practice. That's how you shift behaviour, by making it better for people.
Yeah, and sometimes when people don't realise it's being
exactly,
it's a bit like the changes in the grid, isn't it? That people don't often always know that it's happening, and that's sometimes the way. Not that we should dupe everybody, and should be much better if it was positive choices, but there's going to be a certain amount of doing it for people. Excellent. Okay, I think if there's no more sort of questions, is there anything you would like to say in summary, or to kind of pull last things together? Or I will certainly circulate the slides and a recording to this, and with your email address, so that people can contact you directly if they would like to ask questions.
Yeah, no, it's been great being here, and I guess the only thing I'd say is it is, with the amount of information and daily news about how bad the climate is, and how we know that how narrow the window is, it's going to be hard. But there are also groups like this across the world who are working with such fervour, like, to drive action. And that's the bit we hope to be able to play. And I know you'll be playing a role tying those together so everyone can move a bit faster. We've just got to go for that little window opening in the window and get through it, because I do genuinely think it is still possible with groups like the people on the call today.
Yeah, we are forever saying thank you to our green champions, which is our point of contact within these companies, because they are the people who are really doing the hard yards. And as you were saying, and actually Joe was saying this morning, this, actions speak so loudly, and people are much more likely to change their own behaviours if they see their colleague or somebody just next door to them doing something, greener or socially doing something to support a social enterprise or social initiative. So we do, we know how valuable our green champions are to this whole kind of effort. Well, thank you very much, James. That was absolutely brilliant, and I would really advise everybody, just to download the Giki app, sign up, have a go with it, and think about how it could be relatable in your organisation